Hello everyone, I appreciate that I am the last speaker of the day and I'm the one standing between you and refreshments, so hopefully I can keep you entertained or informed during that time. Oh, right. I'm Louise, Head of Customer Experience and Facilitation. I've been with IATA 3.5 years after a background in governments with a strong background in identity and identity management. And one of the reasons I was so eager to come and work in IATA and in this area in particular was the opportunity to use some of the digital identity technology to transform customer experience, passenger experience. And I'm passionate about that because I'm passionate about flying, I'm passionate about travel. I'm sure many people in this room are. I love it, it's my favourite thing to do. I love everything about flying, except the bits that I don't love. And I want to see that change. And I'm sure most of you here feel the same way. Nick spoke earlier in his presentation about the Global Passenger Survey and what we know that passengers want. And there's two parts from Nick's presentation that I pull out to focus on in the work program within customer experience and facilitation and what we're doing about this and what we can see coming in the future. We know that the travellers, as Nick said, in this post-COVID crisis period are really focused on the simplification and convenience. And we believe that the key here is through automation, digitisation, and using smart technologies and biometrics. And OneID is a program, an initiative that's been around for a while. Probably a few of you have heard about it before, maybe not for a couple of years. But it is, in the past year, has ramped up significantly. And it aligns very much with the outcomes we're trying to achieve to improve and simplify. It's using secure digital identity technologies. And we're working with the airlines in order to be able to bring standards for the contactless biometrics process. Now, there's a lot of biometric implementations around globally, but what we need to get to is the standardized implementation of these biometrics, and we have got there in 2022, and we'll continue to do so over the next year. In many cases, it's not just about the biometric. We know the biometric process works, but it's about everything you need to do before you get to the airport. And it's looking at that second point about passengers being prepared to share their information in advance. Most of the time when you're flying internationally or outside a regional agreement area, you need to prove that you have the right documents to travel, your passport. And it's confusing and it's complicated for many infrequent travellers and sometimes for frequent travellers. Why do I need to have 6 months validity on my passport for this country, but only 3 months validity for that country, and that country doesn't care if it expires tomorrow? Why are these rules different? How do you understand that when you arrive at an airport with your passport that's still valid, but you're not allowed to get on the plane? And this is why that current check is there, that the airlines have to check. They're made to check. Government authorities, border authorities, have put the requirements on airlines. They've transferred an aspect of their duty to airlines for airlines to undertake the document checking process. Do you have the right visa? Do you have the right documentation? In the IATA Timatic, there's over 75 different types of documentation that can be required from passengers in order to be able to travel. And we want to take all of that document checking not only off airport, but off the hands of the airline and into the hands of the passengers to prove to the governments in advance of their travel. A little bit about the work that we've been doing in OneID on that contactless travel component. We are We're at the point where we have a recommended practice that will be published in July in the Passenger Standards Conference manual, and it will be a standard to guide airlines and airports into the implementation of the contactless travel journey. Using that digital identity technology that passengers are already using in all other aspects of their lives. I brought some props with me today. I've brought my phone, although in fairness, I always have my phone. And in my phone, I have my digital identity wallet. I already have it. Most of you have a wallet in your phone as a digital wallet. I'd be curious to know how many use it. Most of us use it because we replace our credit card, and we place our credit card into a secure digital wallet. We either go through a process with Apple or Android to get it in there, or our bank will issue it directly. And then we can put this away and forget about it in most places. And we begin to use that wallet in a convenient and intuitive way, where we approach, we can do it offline. We can say, okay, I'm going to buy this thing, and I consent, and I say yes. And maybe if it's over 80 franc, I might need to use a biometric or enter a PIN code. These technologies are needed to make travel simple and convenient for the passenger. So the process and the recommended practice, the high-level process talks through how you can do that in travel. The passengers offered the opportunity to have a contactless travel process. The passenger is then accepts that. They opt in for this. They're issued a trusted digital identity credential to a digital identity wallet in their possession. The data's not stored anywhere else. It's much like your credit card. That data is only stored in the phone. The passenger can then share that data as they're checking in for their flight. They can do it in a few ways, and they can share it with different parties. They could share it with the airline in advance, and the airline could bind that data to their flight details and say, okay, we're expecting Nick Kareen, we're expecting him at Terminal A, we're expecting him to be hitting the bag drop at this time, the security at this time, and they can build a gallery, and they can match it to that, and they can say, we know you're coming, and when you approach that gate, as you're walking, the camera recognises you, and the gate opens, and you pass through. You don't need to show your passport, you don't need to show your boarding pass. We can biometrically match you in that way. You could do it when you got to the airport. You could get to the airport and you could have been asked in advance, do you wish to have this contactless travel journey, and say, oh no, I don't like the idea of sharing my biometrics, even though I use it every day to unlock my phone. I feel a bit funny about sending my photo. What if they're building the concerns that you often hear, but we know is not the case when you look at the Global Passenger Survey. You get to the airport and you see that queue is moving much, much quicker. There is no bottleneck, and the people standing in line waiting are the ones that haven't opted in for a contactless travel journey. In that instance, you could simply communicate straight with the gate. You could go to a kiosk, you could go to what would only need to be an iPad on the stick and say, share my data, share my flight details, share my biometric. I want to be in that queue. And we're really pleased to be at the point where we are now actually able to bring together the standards to make this work in a cohesive way and supported by a trust framework. And how does it connect to the other part, the digitalisation of admissibility? Essentially, it's the same technology. We've separated out because passengers can opt in and opt out of different aspects of the process. It is, as we heard in the session before the coffee break from Mohammed on the modern airline retailing, this is about your preferences and the personalisation, the type of way you want to consume a service as a customer. In this digitalisation of admissibility, this recommended practice was approved and endorsed as a standard, an industry standard that has been released for the industry from the working groups in IATA. It enables passengers to take the documents that they have and derive proofs of those documents, much like the credit card example, that You do that, and then there's a check to make sure it's authentic, that it belongs to me. I haven't swiped this credit card from KK when she wasn't looking, have I? No. And that it belongs to the person who's presenting it. It hasn't been tampered with in any way. It was issued by the bank and it's genuine. And then it can be issued into my phone and I can use it in the same way. You can do that with a passport as well. You can do that with a visa. You can do it if you had things like an ETA or the ArriveCAN or the ESTA issued to the already available ICAO standard for the Digital Travel Authority. You could have that issued to your phone in the same way. So we've looked and we have released the recommended practice, and we will continue to define the data structures for these credentials so that they can be issued to digital wallets and used in the same way that people are consuming their services in all other aspects of their day-to-day life. Once you get those credentials in your digital wallet, you only need to do that bit once until the original one expires. And so you can use it. They're persistent in there. You can use them again and again and again. And it won't just be with Airline A, it will be with Airline B and Airline C and Airport 1 and Airport 3 and government as well, that you will be able to use these credentials over the period of their lifetime. Once you have them in there and you're preparing for your flight, smart technology can let you know the requirements of your destination well before you're thinking of packing your bag. You can send the proofs of holding the right documentation to the airline in advance in a way that can be verified and trusted. They can then digitalise that checking process and say that you're ready to fly, you're ready to go, and issue you your boarding pass. When you arrive at the airport, you can go straight to the gate, straight to security, which hopefully will have a biometric access. You won't need to be going and having your documents checked. But that's only part of the journey. The end state that we're going for is actually to get governments to issue that okay to travel to the passenger as a verified credential, to move the airline as the intermediary or the broker of that data. Airline neither wants nor needs to know a lot of that information in your passport and your visa, removing the need for the brokering of that data, which ends up making airline check-in agents default border security and undertaking government's work for them. That passengers submit their documents to governments in advance of travel. A lot are doing this already, and we are working with governments in our working groups on this topic to ensure that we make this interoperable and cohesive. That the states can then have two ways they could go. One, they could issue that notification of admissibility as a verifiable credential to the digital identity wallet, and the airline can then verify it's true and carry on, check the passenger and they're ready to fly. Or in one of the so far 22 countries that have interactive advanced passenger information in place, the passengers can apply to the government can say to the airline, that passenger's good to go. And the passenger can just be checked in without having to do anything in terms of proving that they have the right documentation to travel. And just a point on the principles, it's always really important when you're talking about personal and oftentimes when you're talking biometrics, sensitive data. The principles are very important, and this is very much privacy by design, privacy by default. And by design, we're looking at transforming that customer experience through building it simply, with simplicity, with security, and with convenience. These standards have been evolving as the OneID has evolved, and they will continue to do so. However, the passenger should always remain in control of their data. Once it's sent on, it shouldn't be stored. Once you pass through that biometric gate, that transaction is complete and that data should be deleted. And this is all detailed in the recommended practices also. I know we've gone a little over time, so I will cut there, and thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, we'll now open the floor for any questions. I think you explained it so well. No, I have a question here.
I think we need
Helen Massey-Beresford from Aviation Week. I just wondered, we heard a lot of talk during the pandemic about how it would be a catalyst for contactless processes. Is that something that you've seen really coming into play?
Yes, absolutely. We had many implementations of this type of technology, and it was the type of technology that OneID had previously been working towards, but it was very new technology, and there needs to be caution always when there's new technology with decentralized identity technology, or self-sovereign it's sometimes called. And during the pandemic you did see a massive uptake of those technologies, verifiable credentials, vaccination certificates and test certificates being one of the examples, the US and Canada using the Smart Health Card. We began to see these credentials, and more importantly, people's comfort with them increased. And I believe that that's a part of what we saw in the Global Passenger Survey results, with people being more comfortable with sharing their data in advance and using their biometrics, because people's comfort, I think we've seen an influence in the change in the Global Passenger Survey as people have gotten more familiar with that technology.
Perfect. Any final questions from end of day? No? Great. Yeah, question here. And then I think perhaps Martin, did you have a question?
How can you use the implementation of this new technology? How is possible to accelerate the process with the governments or airports are delayed? For example, in Latin America, I work with the airports, and people say, I want more this digital process, but the airport have no technology, the airport concessions not interesting because this is not in the contract. I will invest more money to bring new technology because it's not in the contract. How can the industry cooperate to facilitate the implementation of this technology?
Yes, it's a good question. In parallel, and actually within the OneID work, there is joint work across industry with those that set standards in the area of common use for all of the shared kiosk infrastructure in airports. And that certainly plays a key, because that's where the cameras and the gates are going to be that you're passing through, and how the data moves through that journey. That's likely to have more impact on acceleration within an airport environment. However, there's always the leaders and the followers with new technology and driving new standards. And there will be a catch-up process when people see they're being left behind. And there will come a point that customers will really insist on having their aviation experience be the same as it is with other modern business, that you can interact in this way. I hope that answers. Did you say there was one more?
I'm not sure if Martin... Any other questions before we close the day? No? I think that's it. Thank you, Louise.